One of the biggest reasons that people don't get happier is because they're chasing a feeling. Feelings are evidence of happiness. Like we just finished Thanksgiving, that the smell of the turkey is evidence of your Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving dinner is a combination of protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Everybody listening to the Whoop podcast knows that those are the macronutrients that lie behind all consumable calories, is protein, carbohydrates, and fat, aka food. Happiness has 3 macronutrients as well, has feelings that are associated with it that are evidence of happiness. But the 3 parts of happiness are enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. Those are the 3 things that we need.
What is your definition of happiness? Think about that for a second. Not the easiest question to answer. Our next guest is the happiness expert. This is the Whoop podcast. I'm your host, Will Ahmed, the founder and CEO of Whoop, and I'm about to sit down with best-selling author Arthur Brooks. Arthur literally studies all things the science of happiness. We talk about how he defines happiness, how you can find more happiness in your life, different tools and techniques to foster happiness, the ongoing epidemic around depression right now, and a lot more. This is a great way to kick off your new year. Without further ado, here is Arthur Brooks. All right, Arthur, welcome to the Whoop podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be on the Whoop podcast, finally.
You know, you've got a pretty fascinating career that didn't start in the most likely of places.
No, indeed. No, I mean, you don't become a teacher of happiness at Harvard University, where I started. I started as a college dropout French horn player because that was the instrument that I was really good at. I started on violin at 4 and piano at 5. I was destined to be a musician, and the French horn at 8, and that stuck because I was really good at it. My parents had decided they wanted to have a kid who was a professional classical musician, and I liked it, and it was great. So, and being good at something is unbelievably empowering.
It's a rewarding pursuit.
Excellence is its own reward. Absolutely. Even when you're a kid, we are made to make progress. We are made to excel. Humans are excellence machines. So I did that, and that's all I wanted to do. I spent a year in college, a little less than a year.
Where?
California Institute of the Arts. I was unmotivated. I dropped all my required classes, which you're not supposed to do, it turns out. My father was a college professor.
You're unmotivated at class, but you're still pretty great at the French horn.
Yeah, but I was not doing what I was supposed to do in my job, which was going to college. And so my college professor dad, when I was on academic probation, he encouraged me to pursue my excellence elsewhere, as did the college. And I went out playing professionally, and I did that all the way through my 20s. My parents called that my gap decade. And I went to Barcelona chasing a girl and took a job in the Barcelona Symphony. I did a bunch of stuff. Played a couple of years on the road with a jazz guitar player named Charlie Bird. Got married when I was in Barcelona and started my adult life. Went back to correspondence school and got my bachelor's degree a month before my 30th birthday.
I mean, obviously your career has taken a lot of different twists and turns, and today you're a Harvard professor. Is there anything you look back on about the musical career and sort of miss or long for?
Sort of, except that all the jollies I got from being a musician I get now. I'm doing 175 speeches a year about the science of happiness, except that my audiences are bigger than they were when I was a French horn player. I'm better at this than I was at that. I get more joy from it. There's an endless variety of topics and questions that I could be addressing that are unbelievably satisfying and that people want to know the answers to. And so I'm doing what I always wanted to do as a musician, just not holding the French horn.
Did becoming a great musician help you overcome any types of, stage fright or, the sort of the comfort of speaking in front of people?
Yeah. Although speaking was much harder for me than playing the French horn. As a matter of fact, the first time I had to give a speech in public, well, the first really high stakes case was at my Carnegie Hall debut when I was 22 years old. I was playing chamber music at Carnegie Hall, and I had to give a little talk to the audience about what the next piece we were going to play, and I rehearsed it. And time came, and I walked out, and my knees were shaking. And it's much easier than playing the French horn, is saying 2 minutes of words about a piece of music, but it was so foreign to me, and I wasn't watching my feet, and I was so nervous. I fell into the audience.
Oh,
I literally fell off the stage into the audience at my Carnegie Hall debut. It was epic.
wow, that is pretty good.
It was a message from God. Do something else.
I interviewed Alex Honnold on this podcast.
Yeah.
Alex Honnold's the guy who climbed El Capitan without a rope,
Yeah, I've heard him speak.
free solo.
Yeah.
And I was doing research on it, and I realized that he was incredibly nervous giving a TED Talk. And so I
Yeah.
asked him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, I was more nervous doing that than I was actually doing the
Yeah.
climb."
Yeah, when you're doing something that's not your thing. Now, there's a ton of research on this that shows that if you wanna get better at your thing, go do things that you're bad at. Go do things that are not your thing, and that it's that cross training outside of your area of excellence is unbelievably good for making you more excellent at what you do. And now I actually use that in my work. So I do things that are hard for me. I just got off a speaking tour in Spain, and I go to Spain all the time. I lived in Spain off and on, but what I'm not as good at is actually lecturing on science in Spanish and Catalan, which are the 2 languages in Barcelona,
Huh.
and so that's what I did when I was over there. I was giving speeches, I was giving, stand-up interviews, I was, going on TV, and I was riffing for 15, 20, 30 minutes at a time in these languages that weren't mine because it makes me much, much better, much clearer thinker about what I'm good at, which is lecturing in English.
Now doing things that are hard is a little different than doing things that you're not good at.
True, and so what I do for a living is hard, and I'm pretty good at it, but doing something that's hard that you're not good at, that's what you need to be focusing on, and getting s and being serious about failing and learning from your own failure and paying attention to the steps. That's how progress actually gets made, and if it's close enough to what you do for a living, when you go back to what you're doing, you start to notice the things that could be better and what you're truly excellent at, and so that's what I find, cross-training in separate languages. That's what I should have been thinking about when I was falling off the stage at Carnegie Hall, but I didn't have the science background at that point. All I thought was, "Gosh, what a loser."
I start a lot of days with a weightlifting routine with a trainer
Yeah,
and freezing cold plunge and a really hot sauna and a meditation, and, like, the collection of each of those things is hard for its own reasons,
yeah, yeah,
and I find that doing that makes the rest of the day comparatively feel a lot easier.
yeah, for sure. It's very important to set those things up in a way that favor your work when you finish too. So you're really good at your job. I mean, you have an important job running this company, and you need to be clear and creative and focused, right? First thing in the morning,
Yeah.
right? So you can hit it. So making sure that that routine that you're setting up actually doesn't take away from it, that's additive and not subtractive is key. So, and it's important, all the things that you're doing for sure. I have a very similar routine. What time do you get up?
It depends on the day, but, 6:30.
Okay. So there's an ancient Vedic theory called a Brahma Muhurta, which means the creator's time. That's an hour and 36 minutes, 2 48-minute blocks before sunrise is the whole
Hmm.
idea. Get up before sunrise is the whole idea. And there's a lot of neuroscience that shows that getting up before the sun comes up is really, really good for your focus and clarity. That
Sounds like I
requires
should wake up even earlier.
probably I get up at 4:30,
Wow.
and 4:30 is a good time, and it's easier for me because 'cause I'm older than you, but and it does get easier as you get older. But also, when your kids are little, it's harder to go to bed early, et cetera, and my kids are all grown up. But, you have to get to bed by 9 or 9:30 if you're gonna do that. And then I get up, I work out from 4:45 to 5:45. Don't listen to taxing things. Don't do something that will tax your mental will require a whole bunch of mental effort. And the reason is because you need your mind to wander. While you're working out, you need to engage the default mode network, which is a series of structures in the brain that makes you it's self-perception, it's new ideas, and if you do that, if you don't waste it on some, show that's marginally interesting or a book that might be okay. If you let your mind wander, you'll come up with ideas, and that's really, really critical. Plus, you're not taxing your brain. I mean, you get cleaned up and do whatever you do, and it's part of your routine, your cold plunge, your shower, and et cetera, and then you meditate probably. It's a good idea to hit it hard physically before I actually meditate. I go to mass every day, I'm a Catholic, but a meditation practice much the same way, and then, only then, administer psychostimulants. So no psychostimulants before then. So you've been up for, like, a couple of hours at that point, and then hit the coffee hard, and you'll get 3 solid hours of focus and creativity, and you can't ask for more than that. You get a ton of dopamine in your prefrontal cortex, and you're good to go, man. You can do in 3 hours what most people can do in 12.
That's helpful. I think it's the biggest takeaway I have from that is this question of waking up even earlier, which is something that, is just like
It's hard.
I have to break the routine of going to bed later, but
Yeah, no, that's the key, and some people think they're night owls, and their circadian rhythms are such that they do really good work at night. Most people, if they would actually change their habits, would do even better work earlier in the morning than they think they do at night. It's just harder to break the habit. So it's very hard for me to do it at first, and I never get up without an alarm clock. I'm 60, and I'm still getting up with an alarm clock.
interesting.
I would sleep in. I just would, but I'm not gonna do it because I can't afford to lose those 3 hours.
Those are your 3
Yeah,
hours.
then nobody gets into that 3 hours.
And then what happens in the afternoon for you?
In the afternoon, when you don't actually have the same kind of focus, you use it on the things that don't require a lot of dopamine in the prefrontal cortex, AKA meetings. talking to other people, working with clients, doing business. So all that the business stuff goes into the afternoon. For me, the hard thing is that I lecture at the university in the mornings when I'm in semester. My semesters are usually 7 weeks long, so they're half semesters. And usually I teach in the morning, which is my
And
creative.
that's what you want. You'd probably wanna do it in the afternoon because it's a
Yeah,
little more autopilot.
way better, way better. And well, the teaching's not the teaching isn't autopilot, but it doesn't require the intense concentration that I get when I'm actually writing a column or writing a book.
Right.
Or that's I mean, that requires tons of prefrontal cortex dopamine just for that, the zone that you actually can get in. So when you're writing a business plan, whatever you're doing that requires that, when you've got a lot of coffee in your system, you beat yourself up without actually taxing yourself mentally, and your soul is in order. You take your coffee and man, you get the zone. It's good.
Now, this idea that you can be really focused in the morning, but you sort of have to be less focused in the afternoon. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, I feel there's some days where I feel just as focused in the afternoon.
Yeah, some people, and I can get a second wave sometimes too. So sometimes if after lunch, I go get on a flight, then if I get, I'm flying to Denver or something like that, then I'll get some really good focused time. But it's kind of luck, whereas it's not luck. If I set it up right, I'm getting.
I feel like it, at least for me, some of it's driven by, like, a certain intensity or sense of urgency almost. Like, if I'm sitting in a meeting and it's, 5 in the afternoon, we're deciding whether or not we're gonna bid on an acquisition or what the budget's gonna be in the 1st quarter or, like, how we're about to beat our sales numbers, like, I feel alert, you
Yeah, yeah,
know?
for sure.
It
No,
doesn't
no,
feel like it's a choice, really.
no, no, I get it. And
And
there
there's a little bit
has,
of fight or flight
well,
there
you got to
too.
bring it. I
Yeah,
mean, this is we're talking in the middle of the afternoon, late afternoon. From
yeah,
here, I'm going to go give a talk, and I'm going to, I better be on,
yeah,
man.
you gotta show
It's
up.
going to have an hour, and I better be in the zone. And I can do that. The whole thing is that if you're actually trying to do that, and this is one of the things that people learn when they're past 30, and they're trying to do very, very striver, heavy, super focused careers, is that if you're actually trying to get 12 hours a day of focus and you're doing it without supplementation, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, and you got to pick your zones. Even Hemingway talked about that. He weirdly he said he gets 2 hours a day to write, and it's first thing in the morning, and he would put his typewriter in a closet. He would face the back wall of the closet and then write for 2 solid hours. Now he wasted his dopamine because he was drunk, and the best way
Yeah, he
for you
drank a
not to get
lot, yeah.
alcohol is terrible for your dopamine. I
Yeah,
mean, you
terrible.
spend your dopamine because you're jacking it up, and you're going to get a deficit the next day. And so he could have gotten 4. Imagine would have gotten twice as many
Yeah, it's
Hemingway
it's so many
books.
books. You've said that strivers get less happy with age.
Survivors get less happy with age if they're actually trying to do what made them good originally.
Should we define a striver?
You listen to the Whoop podcast.
Shout out to our listeners.
These are people that are hitting it hard, that they're dedicated to progress. They want to be excellent in what they do. That ordinary is simply not good enough, and they're willing to do the work. That's what strivers have in common, and not everybody's a striver. Most people aren't, as a matter of fact. But what strivers have in common is that they're really successful and they stand out from an early age, largely because of working memory, indefatigable focus, a willingness to work really hard, and innovation. And what they find is that those qualities, which are called fluid intelligence by the psychologist Raymond Cattell, those increase through your 20s and 30s. And so you're the star litigator, you're the best surgeon in your class, you're somebody who's going to invent something on your own. You come up with these unbelievably brilliant ideas. If you're a songwriter, you're the Rolling Stones writing "I Can't Get No Satisfaction," which means you're in your 20s.
And this is the fluid intelligence that, for whatever reason, seems to peak at age 39.
39 is this weird modal age. And so, we have data on Nobel Prize winners in physiology, chemistry, and physics, the sciences in the Nobels, and they tend to, on average, do their Nobel Prize winning work at 39, and they win it much later, obviously for the body of work, but the really inflecting work that they do. And, then going through it, you find that science inventors, it's the same thing. You have to know a lot, but you still have to be at the height of your innovative powers. And 39 is kind of this magic age. I mean, look, your results may differ, but probably they won't very much. And you find that almost every industry where you have to use your brain and creativity, that's kind of when it's gonna happen. And then it goes into decline, which really sucks for a lot of people. So that's the problem, but that's actually the opportunity. What happens is that the fluid intelligence declines, but the crystallized intelligence, which is a better kind of intelligence, comes in behind it. And the big mistake the strivers make is trying to stay on their first curve because they don't know they've got one behind it. And that's a different curve with different skills and different discipline. And you have to know it's coming and step onto the new curve.
And crystallized intelligence is our ability to make sense of, disparate knowledge. It's wisdom, essentially. It's the ability to teach things we've learned.
Yeah, it's basically having a huge library in your head and knowing how to use it. That's the reason that people who in business who are over 50 and especially over 60, they tend to make fewer errors, fewer judgment errors. It's not because 'cause they're smarter, it's just 'cause they have unbelievable pattern recognition. Something new comes at them. Something new comes out of the business, and they're like, "I never seen it before, but I've seen it." Like, "How do you know?" "I don't know." That's because you have so much data at that point that you're actually able to triangulate across unknown circumstances. That's the reason that the smartest people in the world under 30 often make what looks like boneheaded judgment errors because their library is like one book and they didn't find what they were looking for in that book. That's what it comes down to.
So do you think great intuition in, say, like a business context comes from pattern recognition?
I do believe it comes from pattern recognition, and that's what really all the best neuroscience data suggests, that you have a whole lot of episodic memory that you're not completely conscious of. Your hippocampus is full. It's like Widener Library at Harvard,
Right.
and you're able to access it not entirely consciously, but that's when we talk about gut, intuition or gut, that's just data. You've got tons and tons and tons and tons of data. That's why grandma had such good judgment. You go to grandma with some newfangled problem, she'd be like, "Yeah, don't do that." Or, "Let me tell you something," because grandma had an unbelievable, database in her head. It's also, by the way, really important for us to keep in mind that what you put in your library matters. And so everything that you're doing in your 20s and 30s and 40s is stocking your library with books. If you're wasting it on stupid nonsense like binging Netflix, you're stocking your library with something you're not gonna need. And then, you're gonna be looking through the shelves, looking at, Better Call Saul instead of something you can actually use in your business and in your life and your family and your community.
So if intuition is based on pattern recognition and, sort of this notion of being able to tap into a library, is it possible for a younger person to ever have better intuition than someone who's much older with much more pattern recognition?
The more you learn, the better you are, is what it comes down to. Learn, 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 learn all the time. That's really important. So don't waste your time consuming what the YouTube algorithm feeds you. Make sure that you have an agenda for your own learning. And in certain points of the day that you're dedicating yourself to actually learning new things, reading. And by the way, watching and listening is really, really good too, but make sure that it's incredibly nutritious, all the things that you do, and you'll be supercharging your library. You'll be stocking your library. You'll be ahead of your time and your intuition. By the way, I wish I'd known this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking back on starting Whoop and like why I felt such strong conviction to do it. And I don't think I had the library that would have justified doing it.
Mhm. You'd done some other things, is my guess. You'd cross-trained over to it, right?
Well, I had overtrained as an athlete and,
Right.
I sort of had this feeling like there should be a better way to measure the body. But
Yeah.
like when I talked to people who had much more experience than me, so to speak, their pattern recognition was this is a bad idea. You shouldn't do this.
Yeah, and, by the way, you might be incredibly gifted. Some people just have a lot more of it than other people, and what that means is that when you're my age, when you're 60, you're gonna be unbelievable. You're gonna be unbelievably potent. If you can do what you did in, 2012?
Yeah,
How old were you?
22.
When you're 60, you're gonna be a force, is
Mm.
what it comes down to. You're gonna have that much more. If you were that good at 22 to see around the corner like this. Now, a lot of that is fluid intelligence. So it's not just picking the right thing. It might have been that there could have been 5 or 6 things that you could have picked, and you had the focus, the energy, the innovation, the creativity, which is pure fluid intelligence, and you hit it. You hit the right thing.
Hmm.
Great, terrific. It doesn't necessarily mean that you picked the right one, but that you threw the thing unbelievably fast and hard and well at a target and actually hit the bullseye the first time. Most innovators in their 20s, they have on average 3.8 failures before they have their first success.
3.8.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like I don't know what the point 0.8 is, but the point is that the
Roughly
data
3
say
to
that there's
4.
lots of failure on the basis of
Yeah.
that, so that's the case. My guess is that you had unusual crystallized intelligence for a young guy, super high fluid intelligence, and a good and some good luck. And you put all those things together and
Definitely some luck.
you got Whoop.
Yeah, there you go. That's how you
Congratulations.
get woo. Let's transition for a second. What is happiness?
Happiness is, well, what is it not? It's not a feeling. Most of the people listening to us are like, "Yeah, I wanna feel happier." And most people think it's a feeling, and that's one of the biggest reasons that people don't get happier is because they're chasing a feeling. Feelings are evidence of happiness, like the we just finished Thanksgiving, that the smell of the turkey is evidence of your Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving dinner is a combination of protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Everybody listening to the Whoop podcast knows that those are the macronutrients that lie behind all consumable calories is protein, carbohydrates, and fat, aka food. Happiness has three macronutrients as well, has feelings that are associated with it that are evidence of happiness. But the three parts of happiness are enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. Those are the three things that we need, and those are the three things to get better at. You wanna be a happier person, become much more skilled at enjoying your life, getting satisfaction in your accomplishments, and understanding the meaning of your existence. And those are three big philosophical and neuroscientific and behavioral skills.
Enjoyment, satisfaction, purpose.
Meaning. No, no, purpose is part of meaning, and they're not the same thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, purpose is goals and direction. And that's one element of meaning. The other parts of meaning are coherence and significance. Coherence meaning why things happen the way they do, and significance, why your life matters. So those are the three macronutrients of meaning. So purpose and meaning are not synonymous. Purpose is a sub part of meaning.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm splitting hairs here, but it's
Well, the definition matters because
yeah,
one of the things I felt in reading your book about happiness was this sense that if someone has a different definition of happiness, everything that follows from how they think about the pursuit of it changes, so to
yeah, for sure.
speak.
I mean, that's true for anything in
Yeah.
life, right? It's like, what does it mean to have a healthy body? Being 400 pounds and sitting on the couch a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
what comes
I
after
wake
that
up
is gonna be a
every day.
problem.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Do you think most people's definition of happiness is different from your own?
Most people's definition of happiness is based on intuition and feelings, and that's a problem, is my view. The reason I got into this as a scientist, well, frankly, it's because I wanted to be happier, and I was administering what I knew as a scientist to my own life. But I also recognized that when I did that and my life improved dramatically, that it was a shareable and it was a universalizable phenomenon. And so that's the way that I actually did that. I think there's a huge amount of misunderstanding. And when I talk about this with audiences, which I do all day, all year long, I'm doing this constantly. There's a lot of epiphanies and a lot of people and tons of feedback about people who are actually becoming happier as a result.
I feel like a common thing you hear from people is, "I wanna be happy, but," or, "I can be happy, but,"
Yeah.
or, "I'll be happy when."
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you say to these people?
I say that's one of the other big mistakes is looking for the outside world to change such that you can be happy. This is very natural, by the way, and this is the main reason that marriages break down. They say my marriage will be happy when she stops haranguing me, when she stops being mad at me for working all the time, or
Mm,
whatever it is that you have
yeah,
to
right.
do. And that's not the way to repair your marriage, or anything having to do with your well-being. It doesn't make sense to try to change the entire outside world to conform to your idea of what the best life is. You should look inwardly. Plus, it tends to lead you to a grievance or a victim-based mentality, which is the almost surefire guaranteed way to become a miserable person. So that's a problem. I will be happy when money is better. I will be happy when the job market improves. I will be happier when this health problem resolves itself. When I get this solved, that's not the right way to look at it. It's like, I'm gonna start being happy now with all the things I can actually change. I have power over me because I am the founder of Me Inc. I'm the startup entrepreneur of the enterprise that is my life. So I got to get after it. It's the bottom line. And everybody can do a ton. That's why I write. That's why I teach.
I mean, it's an empowering message when you frame
Yeah.
it that way. Now,
Yeah.
one other thing that comes through is that being happy also requires an embrace of unhappiness.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Unhappiness is funny because, of course, we don't want it. There are a lot of people who act like they want to be unhappy because they're walking around aggrieved all the time and offended and et cetera, and what people are doing today. But nobody actually wants to be unhappy. There are negative emotions and negative experiences that are part of any life. And negative emotions are nothing more than data to alert you to threats. Emotions exist as part of the limbic system of the brain. They were evolved between 2 and 40 million years ago. There's literally only 4 negative emotions: fear, anger, disgust, and sadness. They're universal. They're the universal language that says there's a threat, avoid it, is how it comes about. You're gonna get it because there's threats on the horizon. The fact that you have those emotions is evolved from, your ancestors in the Pleistocene who passed on their genes because they had negative emotions. Negative emotions keep you alive and keep your genes alive is the bottom line. We should be very grateful for them, and we're not gonna escape from them. Negative experiences come because we don't like all the things that happen in our life, and this is completely normal and natural as well. This is not just inevitable, it's also how we learn and grow. The biggest mistake that people make today, particularly young adults make today, is thinking that unhappiness is something to be eliminated or avoided, and they waste their time and energy trying to eliminate and avoid unhappiness. That's the wrong approach. I know you don't wanna be unhappy, but you're gonna learn and grow from it, and you're gonna stay alive and survive because of it. So suck it up, buttercup. This is actually the road to happiness lies on a road that goes through the neighborhood called unhappiness. That's just the way it works. So the master stroke is basically this. If you can get to the point where you're so master of yourself and your emotions, and this is what I teach to my MBA students at the Harvard Business School, is how to manage yourself because that you're your most important employee. And self-management comes from emotional self-management. Is where you can get to the end of the day and say, I am truly grateful for all the wonderful things that happened to me today. And I'm truly grateful for all the stuff I hated. You know why? Because I'm alive and I'm going to be alive tomorrow. Bring it on. That's the way it's supposed to work.
What's up, folks? If you are enjoying this podcast or if you care about health, performance, fitness, you may really enjoy getting a Whoop. That's right. You can check out Whoop at whoop.com. It measures everything around sleep, recovery, strain, and you can now sign up for free for 30 days. So you'll literally get the high performance wearable in the mail for free. You get to try it for 30 days, see whether you want to be a member. And that is just at whoop.com. Back to the guests. Yeah, the life of an entrepreneur is certainly running at problems. And any success that I've had in building this company has come through some notion of putting myself in very uncomfortable situations and just this feeling of like you're in the eye of the storm, but that's where you belong to be.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to CEOs all the time, and I'll say, "So what's going on?" They'll tell me about some crummy thing that's going. It's like, the general counsel called, and the regulator, and the whatever stock price, whatever it happens to be. And I say, look, if there were no bad times, your dog could run your company.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
I mean, the
literally.
whole point is that that's why you're employed is for the bad days, not for the good days. Nobody needs you on the good days. When you're basically jumping out of a cake in an all staff meeting saying, hooray, everybody gets a bonus. You're not necessary. You're completely superfluous on those days. That's just dessert. The days when you're needed as any kind of competent founder, entrepreneur, CEO, chief executive is the worst day. That's the day that you earn your salary.
And the interesting thing is it's also what you remember years later. Like when I think about the journey of building this company, a lot of my fondest memories were those sort of moments of being in excruciating pain and then coming out the other side. Whereas like the sort of local highs of you raised this much money at this kind of evaluation or what, you almost don't even really
No,
remember them.
of course not. And the same thing is true in your personal life for sure. I mean, what made you understand your resilience?
Yeah.
You'd tell me about times when you were afraid or you got sick or somebody you loved died or somebody you were in love with broke up with you and you didn't die. You were resilient because you are your enterprise. Whoop is an extension of the enterprise of your life is what it
Yeah.
comes down to. And all these things are expressions of it. And the bad things that actually happen are evidence to you that you are the person that you're trying to be. The fact that you are able to be resilient and strong in the face of tremendous hardship is evidence that you're a good life entrepreneur.
Well, the other thing about this remarkable sort of, relationship between happiness and unhappiness is, like, the profound contrast and the importance of the contrast that comes from enormous pain. When I was reading your book, I was thinking about, a friend of mine I lost this year to suicide. He was my best friend,
I'm
and,
so sorry. Yeah.
yeah, and it happened in January, and I hadn't really experienced loss like that before, and I went through this period of being, like, really in a lot of pain physically and emotionally, and the powerful thing that I felt during it was just how wide my emotional range was. I didn't realize that, I kind of thought the whole scale was just between 6 and 8, so to
Right.
speak. I didn't
Yeah.
realize I had a 1,
Yeah.
and then when you
Yeah.
come back up to 6, you're like, "Wow, I feel great."
I
You
know.
know what I mean?
I know.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's the craziest thing to say, but in a weird way, it made me happier on the other side of it.
Yeah. No, those strong experiences are evidence that you're walking the face of the earth.
Yeah,
Sadness is a really funny one because sadness is an evolved trait. People say they want to live without sadness, but of course that's completely wrong. Sadness is your natural reaction against the idea of being separated from somebody or something that you love. And you're supposed to feel the grief is unmitigated sadness. It comes from a part of the limbic system called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, which is designed to make you feel mental pain. That thing just like will just lights up like a Christmas tree when
wow.
you lose somebody, when somebody breaks up with you, when
Yeah,
somebody dies that you love, like your friend who died. It's truly terrible, is the whole point. And we evolved this because we didn't, during the Pleistocene or whenever, we if you didn't feel sadness, you would do something stupid and be thrown out of your tribe, walk the frozen tundra and die alone, devoured by a wild beast. You have to not want to be thrown out of your tribe, not want to be separated
yeah,
from your kin and your loved ones is the whole point. And this is your incentive, is to avoid activity in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex of your brain is what it comes down to. The point that I'm making, of course, is psychology is biology.
yeah,
The more that you understand the biology, the more that you understand what a miracle it is that you actually feel this. Grief is not unremitting, however, and when you actually feel that grief and you feel it lessen and you're stronger as a result of it, you have a post-traumatic growth, which almost everybody gets. When they have this kind of velocity, you're a stronger person is the bottom line, and that's a wonderful aspect of the human species as well, is
yeah,
that if you didn't have this experience, you'd be weaker than you are
yeah,
today. You're a stronger person as a result of that.
yeah,
Not
and I
that you
feel that.
wanted it, you didn't.
Yeah, I feel that there's a sort of an unbelievable, fascinating life experience that everyone goes through at some point.
Yeah, no, it really are your parents alive?
Yeah,
And so you haven't actually had the experience of losing parents and
right,
then ultimately you will be the last generation in your family. That's weird. That's a
right.
real weird one.
That's a weird
Because I
yeah,
remembered, 10 minutes ago, I was a little kid with parents and grandparents, and now I'm the grandfather.
yeah,
I have
wow.
grandchildren and, my parents are long dead, decades. And it's a funny thing how you actually proceed through that, and there's a natural sadness that comes with it, but there's a naturalness as well that you come to understand that you only get by going through the dark night of the soul that comes from loss.
How does happiness evolve with age?
Happiness is funny with age because this is where we actually have some variance. So we have the pattern that doesn't vary very much is that happiness tends to slightly decline from early 20s until early 50s. Not a lot, not catastrophic. On a 1 to 10 scale of self-evaluated life satisfaction, people usually go from about a 9 to about a 7. And your results may differ too, because I was always way below that because I'm not a naturally very happy person. But still, I recognize that most people also think they're going to get happier through the 20s and 30s and 40s and then don't. And that's hard.
Yeah, that's tough.
Well, because all your dreams are coming true.
Yeah.
Everybody listening to us, you're making the money, you have the jobs. If you want the family, you're starting the family, and all those things are great. But the truth is, there's a lot of difficulty during these periods when you're growing up and you're in your 30s and 40s. Life is complicated, right? How many kids do you have?
None yet.
None yet.
1 in
Okay.
February.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
excited.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
It's the best. But here's the problem. Your sense of remember that happiness is satisfaction and enjoyment and meaning. Your enjoyment's going to go down, but your meaning's going to go up. Enjoyment's a short-term happiness play and meaning's a long-term happiness play, and it's totally worth it. But people fall prey to this idea. It's like I had kids and I thought I was going to be so much happier, and I'm not. I'm not getting enough sleep.
Yeah, they're exhausted.
I'm having conflict with my spouse. It's just, but it's going to be okay. It's going to be more than okay is the whole thing. But so knowledge is really power on what happens with this. But that's one of the reasons that people tend to decline a little bit. In your early 50s, your happiness turns around. And almost everybody sees an increase in happiness through their 50s and 60s, all the way to about 70.
Hmm.
And it's because the kids move out.
Yeah, right.
And then you break up into two groups. So the population is basically 50-50 between those who keep getting happier almost all the way to the end and those who start back down again. Now, this is the important thing for the Whoop audience. fellow strivers, take heed. We all think that if you're really successful in life and work really hard and reap the rewards, that you'll be on the upper branch because that's what the world tells you. Work for success, money, power, pleasure, fame, and happiness comes for free. That's wrong. I don't want it to be wrong. I'm striver par excellence, man. I mean, I'm just like a grinder. But the truth of the matter is that when strivers get older, they're on the wrong side of a bunch of curves. And the result is that strivers tend to be on the lower branch of the happiness curve. Strivers tend to get unhappier after 70. I do a lot of my work on how to not be on the lower branch. And I know how to do it, but you have to go against your instincts.
Is some of that tied to retiring?
A lot of it's tied to retiring.
I
And
have to imagine a striver retiring loses a sort of a bit of identity and
well, yeah, I mean, if you never do anything with your life, you won't know when it's over.
right.
But if you have a big party and somebody takes the punch bowl away, it's gonna suck. And sooner or later, you have to step back. You have to step back is what it comes down to. So the people who retire and are happier are people who are not retiring away from something, but to something. You have to have a huge strategic plan. So you can't afford to keep working. You're missing too many things that you want to do and need to do with your family, your community. And so I help people retire. I guide people. I have people I work with that are the strivers of the universe that I guide them into retirement by setting up a strategic plan for what to go to as opposed to what they're leaving. If
Hmm.
you're running a great big, publicly traded company and you're getting retired by your board at 65 and you're like, awesome, love golf. No, it's going to suck. It's going to suck. Guaranteed. 100%. It's not going to be nice. You're going to get a deep tan and you're going to feel really depressed. And your wife's going to be like, I married you for better, for worse, but not for lunch. And it's going to be a problem. So I walk them through that. But the bottom line is you have to know that strivers suffer when the party is over. And so you have to take steps in advance. And that's a lot of what I talk about. That's a lot of my writing. And it's a lot of my coaching.
What do we have to do to, deal with this sort of depression epidemic? It seems to be happening also at a younger age for people.
Yeah, no, that's the depression epidemic is largely for people in their 20s. For adolescents and young adults is where we see the major explosion, like the 4x clinical depression and generalized anxiety that we see. And it was really starting going back to about 2010, 2012. And so it's been correctly observed that this is how technology started to interact with experience of young adults at that time. Friendship and relationships were becoming to be mediated by screens. And that's terrible. And I could tell you the neuroscience behind it, the whole idea of the, eye contact and touch elicits oxytocin, which is the neuropeptide in the brain of human bonding. It's intensely pleasurable. When you don't have it, you'll become depressed, anxious, you'll become an insomniac. It'll mess up your eating. It has huge physiological implications. The bottom line is you'll be miserable when you don't have those things. So if you're only dating online and you're only seeing your friends on social media and you're only going to work through Zoom,
Forget
woe
it.
be unto your brain. And that's going to be a big problem. That really started in 2012, et cetera, et cetera. The problem actually is a little bit deeper than that. What we find is that if you go back even till about 2008, you find that that's the point in which young people started to say, I can't find the meaning of my life. And they weren't even looking anymore. And so that's what I'm writing about right now. I'm writing a book right now called The Meaning of Your Life and how to find it before it's too late.
Hmm.
Because that's what we really have for the explosion of depression and anxiety. It's not that it's screens' fault. It's that screens are what we do when we don't have meaning, when we're frittering away our time, hoping for the best, waiting for something to happen, and they make it worse. And then there's a lot of really interesting neuroscience and what we need to do to find more meaning in our lives. And there's some very specific prescriptions that we can actually take that can set people back on the right course and that could even potentially create a cultural revolution that would make us all a lot better off.
It's fascinating. I mean, one thing am amazed by is just the power of gratitude when it comes to happiness. I mean, if there's anything I've found that's like actually like a happiness hack, it's this idea of being grateful about things.
Yeah.
Every morning it's part of when I meditate, I think about a few things that I'm grateful. I've gone through periods of time where I'll write them down, but you're literally just happier when you do it.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that. The we're evolved. We literally have more brain tissue for negative emotions rather than positive emotions, and it makes perfect sense. You will stay alive because of negative emotions. Positive emotions are nice to have.
Mm.
Negative emotions will literally save your life. They certainly would in more dangerous times, but even still today. negative emotions occupy such a big part of your brain that you can jump out of the way when a car is barreling toward you in a crosswalk. In 74 milliseconds, it'll transmit through the occipital lobe of your brain where you process visual imagery to your amygdala, which will light up through your hypothalamus to your pituitary glands, to your adrenal glands, and that will spit out adrenaline. 74 milliseconds, you'll jump out of the way. Thank God for negative emotions, right? And that's why they occupy such a large part of your limbic system of your brain compared to your positive emotions. But today, that gives you what we call a negativity bias, meaning that resentment is a lot more frequent visitor to your psyche than gratitude. And every time you're thinking to yourself, like, man, first class in United Airlines has really gone downhill. You're missing the obvious, which is that you're sitting in first class in United Airlines.
Sure.
You're getting to your destination safe and something like on time.
And you're 30,000 feet in the air.
And you're sitting in a pretty comfortable seat and the phone isn't ringing and you're able to do your work. But you're like, yeah, man, I don't know. It's like they're not doing a good job here because resentment presides because of your negativity bias, because of your evolution. So the way that you can override that is not by being a Pollyanna. It's not like everything's great. No, not everything's great, but paying attention to what's more realistic. Reality leads to gratitude. Every single person listening to us should be more grateful than resentful and should be more grateful than they are.
Hmm.
And so if you're a reality-based person, which if you're a striver, you better be a reality-based person. If you're an entrepreneur, it's like, I want the truth. I don't care if it's hard. I don't care if it's ugly. I don't care if it's going to bum me out, man, baby. I want the truth. I demand the truth. Okay. Demand the truth of your brain. And the way that you do that is actually by paying more attention to the things for which you're grateful, as opposed to letting your brain slide into resentment. And that's the way that that works. And there's all kinds of techniques for doing it. You can be in a gratitude circle with your friends. You can have gratitude lists. You can do loving kindness meditation or gratitude meditation in Vipassana, if that's what you're practicing. There's lots of ways to do it, but all you're doing is like, yeah, I'm going to stay in the 20% gratitude as opposed to 80% resentment because
Hmm.
I'm dedicated to reality.
What are other methods for people listening to this to be happier?
The habits of the happiest people are actually not that complicated. And so a lot of what I talk about, I talk about how do you get more enjoyment? How do you get more satisfaction? What are the things the mistakes that you make? Like, thinking that if I get to IPO,
Right.
then I'm going to love it forever. If I get that house, that car, that marriage, that kid, I'm going to love it forever. Not making those mistakes by understanding how homeostasis works in the brain, et cetera. I do a lot of that stuff. But the habits of the happiest people are actually kind of simple. The happiest people pay attention to four things every day. And there are lots and lots of ways to do this. The way to do it is not the important thing. Doing it is the important thing. They pay attention to their faith or life philosophy. In other words, things transcendent to them, where the universe is large and they're little. That's what it comes down to. You're getting that through your meditation. I'm getting that through my religion. Some
Right.
people get that by studying the fugues of Johann Sebastian Bach, or walking in nature without devices in the Brahma Muhurta, the creator's time, an hour and 36 minutes before dawn.
There you go.
Yeah,
248 sessions.
exactly right. You're good. You have good memory. But you got to do it. You got to do something where you're little and the universe is large, because that gives you peace and perspective. That's what all happy people do. And skipping it is done at its peril. Second is family. Family is a mystical bond. Maybe not mystical. I told you about oxytocin, the neuropeptide of family ties and kin-based ties. And if you don't have that, you're going to be in trouble. The best way to get that is through your family. The only reason to have schism with your family is abuse. And, newsflash, differences of political opinion are not abuse.
It's good advice.
Don't screw that up. 1 in 6 Americans are not talking to a family member today because of politics.
That's crazy.
Craziness. And the third is friendship. And strivers struggle with this one. Strivers really struggle with friendship, not because they don't know a lot of people, but because they have a lot of deal friends and not very many real friends. And when you're a super hard worker, I'm a 14-hour-a-day guy. So are you. So are most of the people listening to us. All right. They're on the treadmill, multitasking right now,
Right. Yeah.
listening to us. No judgment.
Yeah.
It's although don't waste the hour. You need to get into your default mode network in your workout as well. But don't turn off the Whoop podcast. It's really, really important that you're not utilitarian about your friendships. You need to spend the time and do the work to have people who just love you, who are useless to you. and you're useless to them.
Hmm.
You simply can't get the happiness that comes from true, intimate, love-based friendships if everybody's useful. Aristotle talked about this 2,500 years ago.
Wow.
He talks about friendship of transaction. Useful friends. They had a telos, to them. And then the atelic friendships, the friendships of virtue, where you just love each other. Usually you have a shared love for a third thing,
Hmm.
and that's why the goal of marriage by the 5th year, it's going to be really successful, is called a companionate love, which sounds not hot, but what it is best friendship. Also has a lot of passion in it, but you have shared love for the relationship, for the cosmic entity that is your love, for the children that you're bringing into the world, for the
Hmm.
faith that you share. I mean, it's just that's when marriage is the best, man, because that's what you really need. That's the apex of both family and friendship is marriage, is your romantic partnership. Lifelong pair bond, man, like wood storks. You're in it together forever. And if you can, not everybody can, but that's the goal at least. And last but not least is work. And all that work matters with work is earning your success. That's why merit-based systems are the only systems that matter. Tenure-based systems, loyalty-based systems suck. They demoralize people. They drive out the best people because
Hmm.
merit is everything. Earning your success, creating value with your life, and being fairly evaluated on the basis of the value that you're creating is life affirming. And then serving others where people need you. And it's great as a CEO of this company because you get all these strokes all day long. People like, I lost all this weight.
Yeah, it's
I got
good.
healthy. No,
The
and
testimonials are great.
totally.
Yeah,
But everybody in the company, everybody needs to actually hear the testimonials. Bring in clients whose lives have been changed to thank the people who are not on the front lines.
totally.
That's the key thing. So service to others and earning your success, that's what matters with work. But the bottom line to remember is faith, family, friends, and work.
I love that. What's one thing that you do every morning that kinda sets the tone for your day?
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit, but number one is I conquer myself by getting up before dawn. I win. It's my first win. I experienced a lot of jet lag in my life. After we leave, I'm going to go give a speech. And after that, I'm going to the airport. I'm going to Dubai. I'm going to be 9 hours off.
I'm pretty familiar with that
Yeah, I know.
flight.
Yeah, yeah. And last week I was in Spain. And so there's a lot of that. But the bottom line is I'm going to conquer my will to sit under the covers. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor,
Meditations.
he wrote the Meditations. He thought of himself as an emperor. He's remembered as a philosopher because the diary he wrote to himself
So good.
is now read as literature. Everybody who listens to the Whoop podcast has or should read the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Read it, get it today. It's free. It's put it on your device and start reading it today. Better yet, in paper. And he talked about, were you made to stay under the covers because they're warm? Literally what he wrote to himself. And this isn't 1,800 years ago. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. And that first victory really matters. And then what do you do after that first victory? You start to act like the victor because your life is your enterprise. That's why I'm getting after it. That's why I'm doing 60 minutes a day, 7 days a week of exercise.
Mm,
And then I'm getting after my soul. That's when I worship. I get cleaned up. My wife and I, my partner, my fellow wood stork, my pair bond, the
yeah,
love of my life. Then we worship together. The first thing that we do together every day is we worship.
and
This
you
would be
go somewhere for it.
we go to mass, and we have a set of masses that we go to that fit the schedule in the right way. That's 6:30 to 7, and then I get to work, and I have won already. My day is like it's on the charts
Yeah.
already every single day, and that's really really critical. And who knows how long we've been able to keep this up. I was going to say I wish I were 40, but I wouldn't have been able to have the wherewithal or the perspective to do that. I'm 60 and I feel physically better than when I was 25 years old. I've got way more energy. I have way more vigor. I have way more optimism. I have way more hope for the future of all the things I'll be able to do. And I don't know how long I'll be able to do it, but it's okay. It's okay. There's a plan.
It
There's a
feels like you'll
plan.
be able to do it for a while. That's my read. Well, congrats on everything. It's been really fun getting to sit with you, Arthur. And if people want to learn more about you or your work or your books, where to?
One Stop Shopping is arthurbrooks.com. That links to my column in the Atlantic, How to Build a Life, that comes out every Thursday morning for 1,400 words a week on the science of happiness, based on the biology and the behavioral science of happiness. It'll also link to books and talks and videos and social media, and that's where to go, arthurbrooks.com.
All right. Well, we'll leave it in the show notes. Thanks, Arthur.
And man, thank you.
Big thank you to Arthur Brooks for joining me on the Whoop Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Whoop Podcast. You can find us on social at Whoop, at Will Ahmed. You can try Whoop for free. It's a free Whoop trial at whoop.com, 30 days full Whoop experience. And that's a wrap, folks. We'll catch you next week on the Whoop Podcast. As always, stay healthy and stay in the green.